We're going to have a really good session now. There's three of us. We haven't planned exactly what we're doing, but we feel we've got some common threads. There's going to be myself from Oxford, Graham from Sheffield, and Terese from Leicester. We're going to try and not just talk about iTunesU, we're going to try and widen it out a lot further to talk about institutional change and the effects it might have in teaching and learning and research. So my name's Pete Robinson. I'm the manager of the Educational Media Service. We're a kind of AV team and a team of learning technologists. We're based in the centre of the institution of Oxford. So we usually take the flak when things go wrong. And we provide a service to help everybody in the university engage with learning technology and also to get media online and also for the VLE. We launched iTunesU in the first three universities in the UK in 2008. So there was three of us who went ahead. I think Open went first, and then a couple of months later, Oxford and Cambridge launched in Apple iTunesU. And it was really quite a strange time. We didn't really quite know what it all meant, putting an institution into a commercial service and making the material available for a global audience. It was quite risky at the time. There's quite a few meetings by senior managers on what did it actually mean, what would people expect from a university like Oxford. So that was 2008, and it's been a big success. It's changed quite a lot of things that go on in the university. We're very proud that we've got over 6,000 what we call episodes, but most of the time it's lectures available for the public good for free to a global audience. Anybody can download them. We were a little bit unusual. I was saying to Andrew at the start that we didn't at the time have anything like lecture capture. So all of the material that we initially launched with and most of the material until the last year or so was all created by either filming or with recorders. So we are only now in Oxford actually implementing Panopto as a kind of pilot lecture capture, which is designed primarily for the students to access through access controls in the VLE. So a little bit of interesting difference there to some of you who've been doing lecture capture for quite a long time. So Oxford on iTunesU, that's how it looked last year. Lots of different kind of series and episodes there. We made the decision right from day one in 2008 to have a web presence that had the exact same content in parallel with iTunesU, because there's a little bit of tension at the start. We all thought we didn't want to get locked into kind of a commercial service if they started changing the rules or changing how they worked. We wanted to be able to say, fine, we've got a web version that's exactly the same. So we use the open source Drupal software that we made ourselves, and every single thing that's in iTunesU is also available on the web and can be found through Google. So just going to show you.
Because digital technology has changed the way we listen to music or catch up with our favourite radio and TV programmes. And now it's being used in lecture halls of one of our oldest universities.
Yes, Oxford is putting hundreds of hours of lectures, interviews and research onto the music website iTunes. They can be downloaded by anyone, but it's no shortcut for students wanting to skip classes, as Caroline Asker's been finding out.
The ability to download music has transformed the charts, making more diverse tracks readily available to the masses. Now the technology is being used to revolutionise one of the most prestigious universities in the world.
Welcome to the University of Oxford.
More than 150 hours of lectures and interviews with researchers and academics are being made freely available on iTunes from today.
It's aimed at people who are thinking of applying to the university. So there are audio podcasts about choosing a college, choosing a course, how to prepare for interview. There's also lots of information on there about research, interviews with famous researchers from across the university.
The university wants to appeal to the intellectually curious and let them make the most of its resources wherever they are. Lectures like this one on quantum nanotechnology are available on the site. but the university insists it's not an escape route for existing students to skip classes.
You won't find a complete series of lectures, so it's certainly not a case of students being able to go on there and see everything that they would normally turn up to lectures for.
And of course, the hard-working students of Oxford don't want an excuse to skip lectures.
I think you probably get more out of being in a lecture than you do probably just watching a video on the internet.
I personally like going to lectures. I like the community of it.
The social side of university does involve lectures. It's one of the big things. It's where you meet the people. It's where you engage with the tutors with the lectures.
In Reading, students will be getting a similar service next year and are open to anything that can improve their learning experience.
I often use the iTunes website, so this is something I like.
It means that we don't have to just learn in the lecture, we can learn all the time.
So I think we've covered some of the main questions. I mean, you can kind of see how risk averse we were there, and we were kind of thinking if we put lectures up, nobody's going to turn up to the real world. But in Oxford, that's quite often the case anyway. But we do put full lecture series up for many of the courses, and some of our most popular stuff is the very first course, say, you do in philosophy. So a big success, huge amounts of downloads from a global audience. So you're leveraging the kind of Apple's marketing and iTunes software. We're very proud about how many different series. So we arrange everything. It's different to YouTube, although we occasionally have a series with just one or two things in. Mainly they're series where more material comes over the time and you can subscribe to them. And we've got 460 different series. We've got over 100 different departments, which at Oxford, that's quite a lot of different departments involved. And this is just a bit of growth. So we launched with not much material, but just enough to give a flavour of what a research university is like. And then every year we've got more and more material, and we're averaging over 1,000 different lectures or episodes every year. This is a figure I'm really proud of. There's actually 5,000 different people in the system, in the database, underlying it all. So we can do lovely things so that if we wanted to celebrate women in science on Ada Lovelace Day, we can just do a nice portal that just shows all the women scientists talking about different things. And it's got to the point where you can usually find a topic you want. So the front of the main website for Oxford University has a podcast of the day or podcast of the week, and they just rustle around looking for something to connect it with somebody's birthday or some thing in the news. I'm just going to show you a little video about impact, because I think for me what's been a really exciting thing is just getting people involved, academics involved, and trying to understand the psychology of why they want to contribute. Why do they want to put some of their material out there to make the world a better place? When we launched, it was just purely the usual kind of find some evangelists, people who've just got a bit of energy, who are happy to give it a try. But over time, we've got a lot of feedback, and we've got a lot of emails, and we've got a lot of messages and things and stuff. So I'm just going to show you this video that was done by 2 students in the summer with a little G4 camera, talking to academics. So they edited this and they interviewed it and did all the work. It's nothing to do with our team, other than we just provided a bit of kit for them.
The first one, I was just approached by IT services. They asked me if I'd find a podcast, and I didn't even know what podcasting was. I said yes. And so they told me all through the lecture series, the series of 6 lectures. In this session, we're going to be doing all these things. About 9 months later, I got an email saying that did I know I was global #1 on iTunesU. So that was my introduction to podcasting, and since then I've made 7 series.
I have a series of podcasts called Caging Schrodinger's Cat. At least once a month, still, someone emails me, saying how much they enjoyed that and how it's inspired them. But I think maybe the most interesting thing was I met a student here in Oxford who said, "Oh, I know you, the way you cut your hair. You're that guy from the podcast. That's why I've come here to Oxford. That's why I've come to this department." And I thought, wow, okay, that's kind of exciting.
When I started, I just put up my undergraduate lectures, and I was just recording them and saying to students that you can have a look at these and download them, and here's the PowerPoint slides. And then when iTunes came along, I sort of added the link to it, and then without really realising what I'd done, suddenly all these hits were coming in, sort of like thousands a week from people around the world who would then send me an email saying, I've been listening to your lecture.
I get unexpected discussions with people when I'm at a conference or doing a talk somewhere. Somebody will come up to me and say they've listened to this aspect and they'll talk to me about that. So I know that academics, students, undergraduates, graduates, I know they've been using it, and I know it's also pretty global.
There was an Indian pastor who listened. There was a Norwegian person who climbed up mountains whilst listening.
A woman, she said she listened to my lectures on Old English while she was ironing, which was in Michigan or something like that.
I have had correspondence with people in the States, in South Africa, in India, and in the UK.
And then there was another, a mechanic, and he had it on his car workshop. He was listening to my lectures on Beowulf while he was fixing cars in Detroit, something like that.
One student from China translated it all into Chinese for nothing and made it available on the Chinese internet.
And it kind of just struck me, this is really quite odd, because I thought it was just going to be our students listening to it or a few other students, but I think I then realised that, you know, there were people out there who maybe not have had a chance to get to university or just wanted to broaden their learning, who were just sort of voracious with this sort of stuff.
And this they can do when they're jogging or when they're driving to work or something like that. So I got a lot of emails saying, I've been listening to your podcast as I've been driving to work, and thank you.
So we had a recent lecture with the Digital Humanities Summer School. It's called the Talk Trophy Lecture. And what we found was a lot of people who weren't able to come said, are you filming? You know, and I think it's almost an assumption these days that that things are recorded and it is able to have a longer term visibility and impact.
The virtual world has presented an extraordinary opportunity for access of ideas. You can be in the slums of Mumbai or Soweto, Sao Paulo, and access what's going on in Oxford. This is new.
You know, the idea in Oxford was, you know, you sat in a tutorial room with one student, which is still very important, and you can be doing that. But then you could be sitting in a room with potentially 1 billion people, you know, in the audience.
The tutorial experience remains unique, but the lecture experience is one that everyone can enjoy.
I think sometimes there's a perception that institutions like Oxford are rarefied and that they are very insular. It's very important that we break down those perceptions and those barriers where they are, that we make our work accessible to those who don't have the chance to come to Oxford. So not everyone's able to come along physically to our lectures, but they can listen to them and they can see videos of many of the lectures that we hold at the centre.
And now I think we've probably got the most material up, if you count it in terms of chronological hours, than any other university in the UK, and we're probably in the top 3 or 4 in the world.
But the more that our ideas can travel, the better.
So hasn't he got a beautiful voice, Ian? It's that kind of, you know, for doing trailers and things like that. So I've not got time to talk about publishing, but the technology that we've got behind this allows anybody in the university to upload and publish their own stuff. So that's why we can make so much stuff available. The last thing I just want to mention is open education. So Andrew was saying, you know, has it changed things? I think it's allowed a lot of things to kind of move forward by an exemplar. So for Creative Commons within the university, we allow people to release it material under Creative Commons, and there's about 50% or more of our materials now under Creative Commons, so people can reuse it and put it in their own repositories or convert it into Chinese and put it on their own internet. We've got projects funded through the JISC that have allowed politics to set up a blog that accompanies all their podcasts, so that they have a kind of dialogue, and the students in the politics department actually maintain and run that. We've had a big project in the English department where we've used the knowledge that we've gained about ebooks through iTunes to pull a large repository of out-of-copyright ebooks into a big site called Great Writers Inspires that we did a couple of years ago. And most of the content that's around there was actually done by student ambassadors who worked with the academics to try and write some notes and extra resources around the material. And they also went around interviewing people, and we did a series of 10-minute TED Talks from English. And that had quite a profound effect in the department, because the academics themselves had not sat in a room hearing each other give a 10-minute talk, and there was about 20 or 30 of them. And you could see them all subtly changing their performance techniques as time went through, as they realised, you know, a good quote at the start kicks off a short talk really well. And we've also, with this large corpus of material, we've also allowed us to sift through it and find about 300 items that we think are suitable for schools. And we've taken that set of material and made it available for free in the Test Connect site. Not enough time to talk about marketing and impact, but it's really important. You know, you've got to do your stats and have a look at who's using it and why. Some lovely feedback from people who write into the academics, and that inspires them to keep producing more stuff. We've got a project called Steeple that finished quite a few years ago, but if you're interested in your own institution on getting going with this kind of stuff, there's a lot of project management documents and advocacy and videos from people. So thanks. I'm going to hand over to a colleague who's going to chat a little bit about their ventures in iTunes and podcasting as well. Yeah, should do one question while we just change over technology?
Okay. So I'm Terese Bird from Leicester Learning Institute, and basically, I'm looking at our story, which is quite different, smaller, but you know, small, perfectly formed. It's really good. It's got its place, and I think overall the story here is that this is kind of the story of how the strategies moved and were inspired by and kind of instigated through iTunesU. It just became a catalyst for many other things. So I think you'll see that in my presentation. So you might know Leicester is vaguely famous now for King Richard having been found under the car park. And that just worked out really well timing-wise for the launch of our iTunesU channel. So serendipity, you know. So basically, I'm just going to go through like the strategic steps that happened in our university. We had very modest resources, and yet we could make it happen. And so if you're in that situation, this could give you some ideas there. Some surprising successes and the kind of learning that was instigated. And yes, they were digging, and that's the site. Okay, so basically, it's interesting how Peter finished with OER. Ours kinds of starts with OER. And also, I learned from Peter how to launch our iTunesU. So it's really cool the way this is working out. So it was a JISC project, that our university was able to launch a very modest OER repository, but at least we got used to the concepts of copyright and openness and reusability, etc. So we had this already there. There was a base of that work having been done, and a bunch of resources ready. And then my boss, Julie Salmon of the 5 Steps, someone was mentioning, was saying, you know, hey, university folks, we've got to go to iTunesU. This is this new thing. Look, Oxford just launched. And I think this was maybe the year after you guys launched. And, you know, this is the next step for OER. Even though, of course, we can argue that iTunesU is not really open. Let's not quite have that argument here, maybe later. But you know, this is the way to get our stuff out there. And it took time. It took some time. We had to argue it out. And in the end, what did it was a couple of projects so that there was money to hire some extra pairs of hands. Now those projects are done, and we're still able to keep it going, and it's kind of just me doing it, sort of. So, and then after that was the Future Learn thing happened, and we jumped into that. And so because those discussions had already happened, there was like a frame of reference and some understanding, like, okay, yeah, MOOCs, okay, we can try that. Lecture capture, we just started. This is our first year that we're actually properly rolling it out. But the conversation conversations had happened. And so people understood. So I'm just kind of making the case for, it was how the conversations happened. It wasn't that, okay, iTunesU happened and then it spun off into. It wasn't that. It was the conversations that got the understanding that, hey, this could work because we were talking about that there, and then maybe this would work here. And then I'll show you a couple of cases of uses of iPads and iBooks that have really sprung up. So, and of course, these feed off each other. So a lot of our iTunesU original collections were stuff from the OER repository that we had been able to repackage. And same thing for the MOOCs. These two feed off of each other, and I think this is true in Oxford. I know that happens at the Open University. Stuff that's lecture captured, we're able to now add that into iTunesU. So far, we're only doing sound because we're not fiddling with the copyright. That's just something that's how we're dealing with it at the moment. And same thing with some iBooks we're going to be able to release into iTunesU. So basically, this is how we did it. In a sense, it was quite from the ground up. There was no kind of strategic, thou shalt launch an iTunes. That did happen at a certain point. But before that happened, this had to happen. And so basically, this was just knocking on doors, making friends with people. Yes, we did get the free lunch, and that was, that's what projects are good for. You can do things like that. But I would bring my iPad to meet someone key, show them things on iTunesU, things that I had made, and that this was before our channel was launched, but things that I had made out of our own learning material. And I say, look, I think I'm going to make this collection from this guy from Matt's. Now that could work with you, space scientists. And they're like, yeah, cool. They still haven't given me anything. And then I would just say, well, can I come to your, departmental meeting? And I got a few invitations that way. And I would share success. I shared Oxford's story. It was great. And what was great about Oxford was they were mostly sound only, right? You were heavy on the sound. And you got that from this, that people were reporting how they're listening to this while they're fixing the car, right? Well, that's something about sound. We've got, video is great, yeah, but sound has its place. And because of that, actually, that's what got people interested at Leicester. They were like, okay, it could be something simple. We can handle sound. We can buy those digital recorders and stick them here at the lecture. It was manageable. And then we offered hand-holding at first. That means Terese is going to go and make sure everything's good, it's working. But then once it gets going, I can step back and kind of have to keep after him until it happens. And so finally we launched, and it happened Easter 2013. I was just sitting at my table in my kitchen, and I just pressed the button, and it happened. And it was so nice. Now, I have to say that, as I said, the resources were modest. We didn't have dedicated staff to this, although I would put in, I don't know. At the time that we launched, of course, I was kind of working on it 4 out of 5 days of my week. But that period only lasted maybe a month, seriously. Since that's happened, I put in maybe 1 day a week just to keep it going. As I said, we mostly have, we lean heavily on recorded lectures, recorded talks, just simple audio. We do have an AV team who will, go out and film special things, special events, special commissions. And they already had a YouTube channel going, and so they kind of got into the habit of sending me stuff over that was doing quite well on YouTube, and they thought it would make sense for the iTunes crowd. And then we would kind of get together and look and see what are, kind of like what you said, who's looking at what countries are looking at what stuff. Another thing that we do, I'm not a camera person, so if I make a video, they will nix it. They will not accept it, so forget it. But what they have accepted video off of me, it's kind of like video, is like these good images, photos with a narration under it, almost like a narrated slideshow saved as a video. That, basically I have to get these things approved by the marketing team in order for them to go onto iTunesU. That's our system. And so they're basically judging on quality, but also they're judging on, does it have a little bit of an oomph factor? So this is all a bit subjective, but as time goes on, we've gotten an agreement, we kind of understand each other. I've got 35 of these collections now. Each one has, several. Some of them have in the, 20 or so episodes. So, success stories. Well, of course, this guy was a success. And it just so happened, the big announcement was coming out just as we were launching. And then they found out that it definitely was him. And we had all these professional films done. So it was perfect. It was fantastic. And it kind of went just about went viral just over the bank holiday after I launched. So, there's nothing that beats serendipity. So if you have something, that your university is working on, I'm sure you've got something good. And, this is the gift that keeps on giving, because now we had then they found out he wasn't really the descendant. Oh, that was great. I got a spike there. Oh, and it was under an embargo. I couldn't flip it live until 4 p.m. that day. And then, now they're going to bury him, so that's going to be more. So, it's great. And then, you tweet about this, and the Americans love this stuff. So it's pretty cool. So this was a surprise success. And this was a history project that was... It was unrelated. It was a JISC-funded history project, a digital humanities about the manufacturing sector in Leicester. And because it was all cleared for OER, it was perfect to go on iTunesU, ready to go. And it was all the media, and I just packaged them up into different topics. And Apple then selected them for their great collections. Now, Apple keeps changing how they feature, so... Right, and you notice this. So it depends what category you're in and stuff like that. But I noticed that when it went to great collections, I got a lot more downloads. This was a very interesting success story. It's just very simple. Our criminology PhD people get together once a month. One student presents to the rest. It's a brown bag lunch, just where I am in my research. And they're interesting topics. I mean, look at this, interesting topics. Just simple audio. It's nothing special, just recorded with it. This was one of our best downloaded collections. So I think it's just, it was something fresh. It was real. You could tell they were learning. So to me, it just shows like how simple things can work really well. And then these two were featured by Apple, new and notable, and then we got tons of downloads on these. And I would just say, it's interesting to note, when that happened, then, normally I watch and see what countries are downloading our materials as a whole. Usually it is the UK or the USA, and they go back and forth. At first it was only the USA was number one. Now we're kind of going with the UK. When Apple features something, China becomes our number one download. And that is very, very important to University of Leicester because not only do we welcome lots of international students, but we have a very healthy distance learning program. And so we would really like this to showcase all of our stuff out in the world. And as you know, YouTube doesn't go everywhere. It's blocked in places. But iTunesU, the only place there's just a couple of places that I think might be blocked. I think it might be blocked in Sudan, but most places you can get it. So just a few of the learning instigations. This is just a very simple one. Just this past term, the head of sociology was working with media and communications and said, this term we've got these fantastic speakers coming in and we're explaining about research, and it's just going to be a seminar with our master's students, and it's going to be so good because they're really special speakers. So maybe you can record them and we'll put them out for the world, and bring your camera and bring your tripod and film our faces. And I was like, okay, no. So I brought the little digital recorder. Actually, I did bring the camera the first time, and I realized it was just wrong. There was nothing to it. They were sitting there discussing. All I needed really was the voice. And by the second time, I said, no, see, all you really need is the voice, blah, blah, blah. And they understood. And so we decided to go ahead and put it on SoundCloud because it has a nice embed feature into our VLE, which is Blackboard. And then I played these also for the iTunesU team, and they absolutely loved them. So what was nice about it was totally from the lecturers. It was their idea, and they want to go forward with this and come up with some other ideas building on this. And then when you link from your, say, departmental site to iTunes, then what's really good is that, say, the potential international students who might want to know what it's like to listen to a lecture in your university. Is my English good enough to understand? These kind of issues we began to find out when we did a few focus groups. And so that's something that we're going to be doing here. this was another development that happened because iTunesU was sort of it was kind of a grassroots thing. It was basically practitioners saying, we do want to try this. It was not our IT people saying, we are providing this for you. We kind of had to make it happen. And when it worked, some people were emboldened to go for it and try other things that, IT wasn't saying, here you go, this is for you. IT can't give these things to us in a sense. We're the educators. We're the ones who kind of have to come up with, let me try this. And so it was our criminology department, and they're doing a master's in which the students are all located in conflict zones, war zones. And these folks, after they get their master's, they're going to work for the United Nations. They need a good education. They shouldn't just be sent photocopied papers and the occasional book. They need some world-class stuff. So basically, we worked on it, and we came up with a plan. We're going to ship them all an iPad. And at that time, this was even before iBooks Author was out. So we had to get an app designer to make the app that the student only needed to contact the internet once a month. That was all they could handle in these countries. So once a month, you touch the internet, you get to Apple, get any downloads through the app. And in this way, we could ship these out to their students. And it has been just so successful that that department is rolling it out to their ordinary master's programs. And people are beginning to talk and say, well, this is quite, this is quite innovative. And some of the materials we're hoping to put on iTunesU. We haven't done that yet. So this is a UN peacekeeper in one of those countries. That's an actual student of ours. Another instigation was when our medical school got the idea that actually we need a platform kind of like that for our students that goes beyond just the VLE. And through a bunch of discussions, they decided at our undergrad level, we're going to buy every student an iPad. And that's what they did. And this is our second year of it. And the justification was stop printing all those workbooks, which have to be updated so often, especially in medicine. You cannot let this stuff get out of date even a few months, because you're liable back to the NHS. You've got to keep it right up to date. It just kind of began to make sense, right? Something that they can instantly have. And it kind of just started out as like an e-reader, but then we started to put some of the recorded lectures onto iTunesU, which of course is a natural on the iPad. And in fact, my job is now, I've been swallowed up by medicine, and I'll be working exclusively for them. And a lot of my work is going to be iBooks. But I'm also going to keep helping out with the iTunesU channel because it's important. And I guess I haven't quite made it clear in my slides how lecture capture fed into iTunesU, but you can kind of see how it would. And these things just fed off of each other. Our lecture capture was sped on also by students. It was was actually a petition from the student union that said we just want these things to be recorded, and we're doing it. So I think it's a great development in that way. So on that note, I will finish and hand it over to Graham.
Thank you. Again, I think if anybody's got an interim question, just while I get this working.
I've got a question for Peter, actually.
Good, Peter.
What do you reckon is people's interest in audio at Oxford as opposed to video?
Audio is great. I love it. It's still very, really important. I've been doing media most of my life, and the video we showed to my students over the summer, we've gone through an interview process to find some students who are good enough to make that kind of video. Audio is empowering. Anybody can do it. It's got a digital recorder. You can practice your presentation skills with it, hearing your own voice. It's great. I love audio. Video can often be just a big, shiny, glamorous thing that confuses things. And you also waste a huge amount of money. My top tip is really devices. You try and not let the crazy people in marketing spend huge amounts of money on glamorous promo stuff. It's got a really short shelf life. You know, the video from 2008 doesn't look dated.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the nature of videos. Things fade quite quickly. You know, a good well-produced piece of audio can last 10, 20 years. Well, got one question.
Without any further ado, thanks very much for that. I'm going to try and weave what bits of too much presentation I did in and around what my two esteemed colleagues have done, so we can try and get some complementary overview. So I'm not actually managing our iTunesU service anymore. I instigated it between December of 2013, and honest comment to our marketing department, who I don't know anywhere near it. No, actually, they've actually got ownership of it now. I got back to my job in the learning technology team, doing the more traditional things, many things we talked about earlier on, like Connect and lecture capture. So I've not been able to rustle up a Spice Group, a Spice Girls example, but just to say that we are the new kids on the block, nonetheless, in terms of Russell Group universities. So obviously Leicester, Oxford, many others. Sheffield went live actually in January 2014, so exactly just over 1 year ago. We're still very much finding our feet. It's very early days for us. We don't have a lot of or any kind of real evaluation data of what we've done, so we're still, as I said, we're still running it. We are running it in parallel with a Future Learn initiative that we also started a year ago, and there's been a little bit of cross-fertilisation across that. So really, perhaps we go back to some fundamental questions, which is why are we doing it? And we've had a number of mentions of our marketing department, both with those who vet content and so on. Now, we actually came at this from another angle. We have a very strong emergent commitment to public engagement at the University of Sheffield. We believe very firmly that it sits at the core of our institutional values, and this is, to me at least, has been the most important thing about driving our iTunesU initiative forward. So we believe that we are public servants, we are global citizens, we have a responsibility to share the benefits of education throughout the world. It's a well vaunted story that in 1905 the University of Sheffield was founded very largely by the generosity and donations of the people of Sheffield, and we believe we are, as a civic university, we are of Sheffield, we are of the people of Sheffield, and that is our role. It's very much about that. We, like Oxford, like Leicester, like many universities, we tackle global problems. We find cures for cancer, we find cures for global warming, we find answers to all these problems. It's our responsibility to share that with everyone, whether they be people walking down the streets of Sheffield, people of the UK, or the people around the world. So that's very much what we do. And as a result of that, the actual amount of marketing or PR type content we have in iTunesU at the moment is virtually non-existent. Having said all that, there is also no doubt that having a presence on iTunesU has very much the potential to raise the profile of our individual contributors, their disciplines, and also more broadly the university. But of course, like many universities, although this is at Sheffield a centrally run initiative, many of our academic colleagues don't necessarily identify with a kind of corporate membership of the university in the same way that those of us who work in central services do. And that's a very important cultural point, which I think probably many of us have experienced, whether implicitly or explicitly. You know, you work at the centre, I'm employed by the University of Sheffield, I'm not employed by the Department of Archaeology, although that's where I was a student and have many dear colleagues who work there. The other thing to talk about with Sheffield is, unlike Leicester and unlike Oxford, we are not coming in on the back of a previous commitment to OER. So in fact, our new representation on iTunesU and Future Learn is absolutely brand new to the university in terms of OER. We have not been traditional embracers of this. However, what we have had has been a number of other streams of activity, some of which we've been able to repurpose in iTunesU. So, for example, we have had, as I worked for 12 years as a producer in a learning media and development unit which specialised in producing video content and video-led multimedia content, often very bespoke types of materials. We've also been running a lecture capture pilots, a lecture capture service since 2008. So we did have some content, but we don't have that specific background. So really, when I was asked to do this by a Pro-Vice Chancellor for Learning and Teaching, and ultimately by the Vice Chancellor, I thought it was very important for us to have a vision. And I think if you're going to go into something like iTunesU, it helps to have a vision, take ownership of a vision. If you're the person who's driving it, make sure that vision is something that you really feel you can identify with. And it was simple. It was just a small task of taking the fantastic diversity of all the things that we think are excellent about the university and trying to represent those in a digital environment. Now that is actually quite a big ask. So one of the first things we did, and we're not going to talk too much about how we set up, because we could probably all tell you for hours about all the things, the various steps you go through, and as Peter said, Oxford have documented this fantastically. I should also add that, like Terese, I owe a huge debt of thanks to this man for saving my life on at least 2 occasions by talking us through the entire process, and in fact setting very much a blueprint of how to actually make this happen. Peter, and also a colleague of Peter's called Barry Cornelius, who did a marvellous presentation that I went to several years ago, really looking at some of the devils in the detail. Because, am I right in saying, guys, there is devil in the detail with this job? And we'll have a look at some of that in a moment. But what are the sorts of things we felt we wanted to demonstrate our excellence in? Well, obviously one is learning and teaching. Very much also a very strong research-based agenda at Sheffield. It is what describes itself as a research-led university. Although, like many research-led universities, and if anybody works at a so-called research-led university, if you ask your head of management, finance and accounts where the money comes from, at least 65% of our income is actually derived from teaching. So whilst research drives the kudos of the institution, it's actually learning and teaching. It's actually student fees that pays my salary, basically, at the end of the day. Now, as I said, public engagement is something that's become a very strong initiative at the university. In the last 3 years now, we have a public engagement group, which I'm very fortunate to be able to sit on. We run at least 2 biannual public engagement festivals, which the last time we ran it was in September 2014 in Sheffield City Centre, which we actually pump-primed with £250,000 worth of development money to get academic colleagues to work with local artists and people in the creative sector to find interesting and innovative ways of rolling out and presenting our research to the public, and that's something we'll come back to in a moment because it's become a very important strand of what we're doing, in fact probably the dominant strand now. Outreach in terms of appealing to new student potential candidates, and one of the key ways we've been doing this is actually to tackle, or rather to target material directly at teachers. So for example, one of the things, I'm not having a great deal of success getting onto the internet here, by the way, so I can't show you anything live from our collections, I don't think. For example, we're now running Teachers' Days where we get school teachers to come in from the Sheffield region, we get them up to speed. We have academic colleagues who give short, focused presentations on new aspects of the national curriculum, for example. So things that teachers got to teach at A-level, but they won't have actually done at university. So it's new content for them. So we're pitching that kind of stuff right in. Supporting the student experience is something that we're very conscious of. We got the Times Higher #1 ranked for the student undergraduate experience last year, and of course we're very proud. And we have some lovely, fluffy corporate videos to celebrate that fact, but not on iTunesU. You can go to our university main website if you'd like to see those. And we're also very keen to develop student-generated materials. And in fact, this latter point, talking of lessons learned, was an area we thought we would have made more progress with up to now. But in fact, that's actually been a little bit of a slow burner. Student projects are fantastic when they go well. They're less fantastic when they don't go well. And getting a group of 30 students into a room, this was prior to June, prior to the copyright changes, and saying, don't put any copyrighted materials into your videos, doesn't stop you from opening the first one thinking, let's just have a quick look at these before we put them onto iTunesU, and discovering the X Factor logo emblazoned right across the first 2 seconds of the video. So that can cause little hold-ups. But very quickly, just a very quick snapshot, and it will be a snapshot, of the sorts of content. The first thing we put into iTunesU was a collection of 200 screencasts. So this is showing the dovetailing between our lecture capture solution and what we can actually put in. So this chap, Anthony Roster, great colleague, he actually produced about 200, it was actually about 220 15-minute tutorials on engineering maths. And what Anthony did 2 years ago was he bought one of those smart symposium-type monitors and a pen, and we use Echo 360 at Sheffield. We've had it for about 5 years, and included in our license is Echo 360 Personal Capture, which is the desktop personal capture software-based capturing solution. And he sat down over the summer holidays and he just recorded, and then he gave them all to us. And because he just wanted to max out his audience, he wanted to get as many people. And prior to a very recent success we've had, this has been our most popular content. So that's to show you, as Terese said, you can pull in material from your lecture capture stuff. We don't have a direct, elegant solution, by the way. We just had to re-upload it. So that's something we might want to think about. One of the key things that has had an impact on our learning teachers, sorry, I've just stepped over the last one. It was an example of some talking heads which our English literature department did about the importance of feminism as a critique, as a way of looking at literature, very important. One of the things we did, which was recapitalising on some material I produced about 5 years ago, was some instructional video which teaches archaeology students how to actually dig. So when you do a degree in archaeology, there's an expectation that it's quite possible you won't end up as a professional digger. You may not end up digging at Richard III with the Leicester team, because they've also got a very strong archaeology department, apparently. No, they do. I've got several friends who work there. So one of the nice things about this is that actually getting media onto devices is a bit of a challenge. And one of the things about iTunesU is it makes it, because it's a downloading service as well as a streaming service, is it makes it very easy for students to actually put video content onto their devices, because that actually is a bit of a challenge unless you go down the app route or you go down the releasing an iBook route. So this is something, because believe it or not, when we send students off into field trips, they're not often in 4G areas. There's not many areas of the Peak District where we get a lot of decent coverage. Even in Sheffield city centre, it's not ever so clever. As we said earlier on, let's not forget about audio. You can't watch an instructional video when you're driving to work, but you can listen to some Italian podcasts. This is an example of some outreach stuff. We've done this in collaboration with 100 Sheffield sixth form schools and colleges. This is actually intermediary skills for students coming into university. It's all about orientation. It's all about making that gap, that leaping over that gap between school and university. And then this is one that I mentioned came from the Festival of the Mind. The Festival of the Mind is the big public engagement festival that we had, and I'm going to come back to this in a moment because this has been our biggest hit so far. One of the questions we still haven't answered yet, and I can't answer you now, but I will pose the question. We don't know who the audience is. We know little bits about it because we use Apple's reporting tools, because we were on an Apple-hosted solution. They're not terribly good. I'm just going to cover over some of this stuff. Because we're early days, and I'm going to look at some access in a moment, we don't have anything like the fantastic corpus that Peter has, or even that of Terese either. However, we have got here in the last year, so we're kind of quite pleased with the fact that we've actually managed to get all the faculties represented. We've got over 80 collections now, 700 items, and this data is a little bit out of date, I'm afraid. The last snapshot I was able to get is not been since December because the reporting tools aren't very good. So we've had a massive leap recently in a number of accesses, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But at the moment, we've probably got about 50,000 hits in total since we opened. Okay, I'm going to be very quick. Something that never occurred to me was that you need to market the content if you want to drive traffic towards it. And this is something that happened, and I'm going to make this my closing point, actually, because I want to give some time for questions. We pitched this content to Apple because you can actually write to Apple and tell them you've got good stuff, because there's a lovely chap called Daniel, who's the manager for iTunesU, and he has a team of people who go around scouring, looking for all this new and notable stuff. But he always says, if you've got anything good, let us know, because it makes his job easier. So when we did this, which is a recital of the planets interspersed with astronomy lectures, they were very, very pleased. And this has been our biggest single hit now. We've had 28,000 downloads on this since the end of October, which we're quite pleased about. Lots more to say about project governance, but I think we're going to stop because we want to give some potential for a bit of discussion. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to report on all this work, and Peter, Terese and Graham have done an excellent job there, but we really wanted people to have a chance to ask questions about any of what you've heard at this point. We've probably got about 10 minutes for questions and discussion. Should we just see what comes? Do you want to come to the front and then you can see people? I'll leave it up for the three of you, though, to take the questions. In fact, give me the mic and I'll run around and I'll be that idiot.
Okay.
Hi. Yes.
Hi. So one of the concerns that I have is with regards to video and using it across platforms like iTunesU, and thank you, is with relation to copyright and how are staff being trained to be aware of some of the implications of this, and what steps are some of the other universities taking to combat this?
I can answer. I don't know about if you guys want to answer. Yeah, I'll take a first stab. We haven't sorted it, I have to admit. We have a dedicated copyright person, and basically we're working with her to now begin to put together some sessions to educate staff about it. And it really it started coming to light because of iTunesU. It's really come to light now because of lecture capture. And because lecture capture captures all the slides. And even just on the slides, people are using picture photos from who knows where. So we have had training in place for staff, but they weren't terribly well attended. And I think it's because they needed some signposting, like, you need to know why this is. So now these platforms are becoming, you know what I'm saying? Now there's an international stage. Now there's a reason to worry. Yeah. So I think I'm going to use that to just kind of brand our sessions, and that's what we're doing about it.
We were slightly fortunate because we tackled this nut. We cracked this nut. Well, we didn't crack it. We started to look at it about 5 years ago when we introduced lecture capture before, then iTunes came a bit later. We'd already gone somewhere down it, but it's a massive, massive problem. Yeah. It creates loads of hassle. You go and film somebody's event and they've got slides in. Then your editor's got to have to. If it's a high-profile one you want to make a bit of a deal of, your editor's going to have to go through and cut all the stuff out. It's a big job. I know the law has changed recently. That might ease up. We've probably got to reevaluate it, but it's the biggest single headache in the whole job.
Question here.
Okay. Hello, I'm Stefan from Southampton, and I work all the time with the legal department to try and kind of sort these sorts of things out. And it became such a headache that what I did was create so much work for them that their sort of model of working wasn't sustainable, and that was the only way to kind of combat it, really. So now the responsibility really does lie with the academic teams to make sure that they've got everything in place before the work comes to me. And actually that's gone, well, it's getting better and better, and it's going quite well. And it really is just sort of about education. But really the gatekeepers for this have to be the academic teams themselves and not the legal departments, because, for instance, we make MOOCs. They were printing off 60 pages of comments to make sure that the links in them were sound and were not misrepresenting Southampton in any way. That's bonkers, So, for me, it really has to come back down to the academic teams. And the more guidance and assistance you can give them, the better.
They won't tolerate plagiarism from their students, so why should anybody else tolerate creative plagiarism by them? It's as simple as,
We've got a question from Graham over there.
Okay, yeah, cheers. I've actually got two questions, but I'll stick with one for the moment. I got a good sense from you about, what happens when you use iTunes University and so on, and a lot of the experiences from all three of you very much match my experiences of using YouTube. And I wondered what I didn't get from any of you was a sense of what is the real advantage of iTunes University, apart from being available in China, over YouTube, and what are the disadvantages of iTunes?
In a nutshell, I think Andrew from Open University was here earlier. He's not still here. Gave a little good talk at Alt-C in September, October, talking a little bit about that question. So fundamentally, iTunesU is a little bit biased towards the Americas. It's not as Google friendly as just a solid website that's been search engine optimized.
Yeah.
So if you were trying to attract a certain type of audience, maybe younger, 14, 13, 15-year-olds from the UK, you might want to think more of, say, YouTube. But the way I think about it is we try and produce stuff in a way that's licensed so that we can do what we like with it in any channel we want. So everything we put into iTunes goes onto our website, and most of it goes into YouTube, but not all of it, because some of it's just really esoteric audio research stuff.
If I could just add to that. Also, YouTube is only video. iTunes is audio, video, text, PDF, and iBooks. And so you've got all that kind of media. And as came out in some, you can download it and take it away from the internet. And whereas YouTube, you can do that, but you have to rip it and it's kind of dread.
Downloadable downloadable is a big key.
One.
That was key for our field-based stuff.
Really quick question about the download issue. Talking to staff at my university, Birmingham City University, that was often a sticking point. The idea that people could download recordings of them and then therefore have the potential, not that anybody probably would, but distribute those recordings. A lot of staff felt really
it is kind of hard.
Can I just repeat that question for the stream? There's a question about downloading content and the IP implications of that and staff anxiety about that.
It was the personal image stuff, really, less about them being protective about their passwords.
Okay, can I just say we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, so if we keep this on quick, we'll move on to the next session.
I think there is no magic bullet about all of this legal and filming people and stuff. At Oxford, there's plenty of people interested in doing various different things to keep everybody occupied and keep enough content spinning out of their sheet. So, I mean, just don't. If somebody has any qualms about being recorded, it's just absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. There's no. I mean, I'd never.
Just a distinction between being recorded. So nobody has ever refuses being recorded. But one of the questions that staff ask is, can that recording be downloaded?
Can I just briefly say, it's hard to pull it out of it's a little bit hard to pull it out of the iTunes. Apple hides it. So you download it, you take your iPad or your laptop away, but it's a little bit hard to pull it out of the software. It's not too easy to then take it and steal it and put it in it.
Okay, I think we'll have to stop it there, I think, Graham. But can I just say, you have now met Terese, Graham and Peter. Really useful people. I'm sure open to questions later.
We can talk later. It'd be lovely to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.